Take 37 yet again. Today's notes are 9-7, inverse trig functions. So what we've already figured out are the trig functions, the sine, cosine, and tangent. Today we're going to take the inverse trig functions, and they are look like sine -1, cosine -1, and tangent of -1. We're going to find out what these are used for, what they're good for. First, I want to locate those in the calculator. Right above the sine, cosine, and tangent are the sine -1, cosine -1, and tangent -1. If you use your phone, sometimes you can hit the second button and it can bring those inverse trig functions up. So that's how we use those. All right, these are used for, I want to make a note of that. What are these good for? Well, these help us find, they're used to find the angles in a right triangle. So we use the trig functions to find the sides of a right triangle. We use the angles we use the inverse trig functions to find the angles. And of course, in a right triangle, so let's draw a right triangle real quick. If we put ourselves here at the top angle, the opposite side is down at the bottom, the adjacent side is on the side, and right next to us, and the hypotenuse is across in the right angle. Very important that we are able to identify those every single time we need to. All right, let's go inside and do some examples. Second to last notes. Are you excited? I am. All right. Our directions are going to tell us to find the measure of each angle. In example 1, I have a triangle given to me, and it's a right triangle. I'm going to call it triangle ABC. And I know a couple sides. I've got 6 and I've got 13. All right, I want to find for both angle A and angle B. So here's how we do that. We still need to think about our sides of the right triangle the same way. So put yourself at an angle. I'm going to put myself at angle A. So if I'm there at angle A, my side 13 is my hypotenuse always, and my side 6 is my adjacent side. Which trig function uses that? Well, let's remember our friend SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA, and A in the H is used for cosine. So I'm going to use the cosine of my angle here. Cosine of A is equal to my adjacent over hypotenuse, 6 over 13. Now, how do we actually solve for A to find an angle? That's where the inverse trig function comes in. I'm going to take the inverse trig function of both sides. Since I'm using cosine, I'm going to take the cosine of -1 of the left-hand side and the cosine of -1 of the right-hand side. And what happens with that? Let me show you in the calculator what happens. If I take the inverse trig function, so you have to hit second and the one you want, of the cosine of 30, for example, so the inverse cosine of the cosine of 30, I get 30 because cosine, -1, and cosine are like opposites. They're inverses of each other. So they're like multiplication and division. They're like addition and subtraction. They're like the square root and the square. Okay, they cancel each other out. So I'm just left with the angle that I'm given. So if I want to find the measure of angle A, take the inverse trig function of both sides, and what happens then is that inverse trig function and the original function cancel out. So I'm left with just A. So A is the inverse cosine of 6 over 13. So do that by itself, inverse cosine of 6 over 13, and I'm left with 62.5 is, round to the nearest tenth, my angle. 62.5 degrees. Okay, if I put that on my triangle then, 62.5, I can find my angle B over here. I could do trig again, or I could do trig by starting angle B, or I could just use my 180 principle. Angle A and angle B and angle C all add to 180. Since C is 90, that means angle A and angle B have to add up to 90. So take 90, subtract 62.5, and I get 27.5 for the measure of angle B. Cool. Let's do one more. Example 2. If we have a triangle, let's call this triangle BEN. No relation. This side is 3, this side is 4. All right? Cool fact, I can know that my hypotenuse is 5 because it's a 3, 4, 5 triangle, but I'm interested in now finding the angles. I want to find the measure of angle B, the measure of angle N. Put yourself at one of the angles. It does not matter which one you put yourself at in this instance. If you want to find both, put yourself at B because that's the best one. Across from B is 4, it's the opposite side. Right next to B is 3, it's the adjacent side. What uses the opposite and the adjacent? That's the tangent. So take the tangent of b, that's going to be equal to opposite over adjacent 4 over 3. Since we're using tangent, I need to use the inverse tangent. So tangent -1 of the tangent of b is equal to the tangent of -1 of 4 over 3. Okay? My tangent and my inverse tangent cancel out, so b is equal to the inverse tangent of 4 over 3. We can find out what that is. Inverse tangent of 4 over 3 is equal to 53.1 to the nearest tenth. Now, I could take that and subtract from 90 to find my other one, but I also want to prove something to you here. If I would start at angle N, okay, if I put myself there, it's kind of his arch nemesis. Now my O and my A switch, so this becomes the O, this becomes the A. Do the trigonometry there. So I still have the O and the A, it's still tangent. Let's take the tangent now of angle N is equal to opposite over adjacent 3 over 4. Okay, and by now you can tell that when we do the inverse tangent, I can just take the inverse tangent of one side. So N is equal to the inverse tangent of 3 over 4. In my calculator, the inverse tangent of 3 over 4 is given to me as 36.9 to the nearest tenth. So angle N is equal to 36.9 degrees. And I would have found that if I would have subtracted 53.1 from 90. So just to prove to you, it doesn't matter which angle you start at as long as you do your trig correctly and as long as you find what it's asking you to find. So I found both my angles. Okay, I'm going to give you your WSQ question in these notes. This is the triangle I want you guys to solve for the WSQ, and I want you to solve all of it. So triangle XYZ, I'm going to give you 10 and 24. Here's my right angle. Okay, I want you to find the side XZ, and then I want you to find for angles X and angle Z. If you do not have a calculator and you cannot do the inverse trig functions, just type it out in the space provided of what you would put in the calculator, and then when you guys get to class, you can type it in. All right, guys, have a great day. I will see you later.